Hey everybody, this is Perch, and people like to challenge me on some of my assumptions around politics and comics. I, so I've got a viewer question here, and I'll get to it in a second. But well, let's actually get to the question. I'll go into more. But the question's kind of funny. I mean, it goes. All right, here we go. Hey Perch, like your show, but disagree very strongly with your assertion that there's not a political agenda behind modern comics. It's very clear that there's an ideology that's being planned, calculated, and pushed. Planned, calculated, and pushed. Those are the three words I'm going to center in on, by the way. By the way, I don't think that my opinion on this is as controversial as people make it out to be. I don't think they're listening. But anyway, we'll get back to the mail. It is very common in comics for characters to spout off anti-Trump rhetoric, but you will not see a single comic that will have, say, Superman shouting, "Let's go, Brandon." All right, I'm going to stop there for a moment because that's hilarious. I mean, just sorry, just forget all the rest, all what you're angry about, everything else. But I want you to picture, if you will, the Legion of Doom is attacking Metropolis. Lex Luthor is there, Cheetah, Sinestro, Brainiac, the whole crew. They're getting ready to really cause some major damage. Buildings are toppling. The heroes of the Justice League, where are they? Nobody knows. Screaming in horror, and dust everywhere. The sun is blocked out with the sheer smoke and mayhem. That the Legion of Doom, they're out to murder everyone. Suddenly, breaking through the clouds with a sonic boom, comes Superman, Hal Jordan, or John Stewart, or both, and they're using their Green Lantern rings to bring the rest of the Justice League speeding into action. And Superman points to Lex Luthor and says, "Lex, we're here to stop you. Let's go, Brandon." Sorry, that would be hilarious. I mean, it would be. It would be. I don't actually want to see that, but it's funny in concept. Alternatively, you could have Captain America say, "Avengers assemble," and "Let's go, Brandon." That's another one you could do. Or Flash could say, "Flashbacks, let's go, Brandon." I mean, anyway. All right. Enough of all that. Sorry. Back to the mail. I love your show, Perch, but your desire to stay apolitical has a blind eye on this one. Much respect. Cool. But first of all, thank you for writing the mail in a nice way. I mean, and I do appreciate people disagreeing with me, challenging me, other things. It's nice when people just lay out their opinions and don't do it in the form of blind, naive, Perch, cuck boy, can't accept basic facts. Anyway, so first off, I'm hung up on the fact that superheroes shouting "Let's go, Brandon" would be actually pretty hysterical. But by the way, the whole "Let's go, Brandon" thing. Forget whether you like it or hate it or whatever else. I think this is one of the first kind of organic. Is it a meme when it's real life? It's one of the most organic ones I've ever seen. This whole NASCAR race is going on, and the crowd is chanting "F Joe Biden," and the reporter's like, "Well, I don't want to acknowledge that." So, I mean, I'm sure in her head she was like being pretty clever. She's like, "I'm gonna say they're saying let's go, Brandon," and it became a rallying cry. I mean, that's it. Whether even if you love Joe Biden, you hate the Republicans and everything else, you gotta give some. You gotta give respect a little bit to the fact that this thing was very, very organic, very kind of sprung up. The origin story behind this is kind of charming. That's all I'm saying. So I think I don't. Despite the fact that I think it would be very funny to see that in superhero mouths, I never want to see that happen. Why? Because same reason I don't want to see them spouting off Trump stuff. I mean, 10 years from now, you want to read this comic and you don't want to be reminded of "Let's go, Brandon" or orange spray tans or whatever people are throwing in there. By the way, there's been some Trump stuff in comics. I think it is an exaggeration to say every comic. It's not even close to every comic. There's been a few, and when it has shown up, it's been pretty cringy. I mean, I don't particularly care for the comic, but in fairness, when Eric Larson put in Trump in Savage Dragon, it was at least slightly more related to the story that he's telling of Savage Dragon wants to move to Canada and everything else. I'm sure there's some wish fulfillment in there, what Eric Larson himself wanted to do. I don't know. But at least it was a little bit more organic. You compare that to, say, the Modoc Trump, which is just terrible. I mean, there's been some others. I generally speaking, and this is my biggest complaint when comic creators, the writers, put this stuff in, it feels like shoving a square peg in a round hole. It feels like the comic creator really wants to say this stuff, and they are tired or exhausted of saying it on Twitter and having that fight, so they just start to insert it into the characters' mouths, and it almost always comes across super awkward. I don't not cringy, just lame. It doesn't sound right. It never comes off good. And I wish they wouldn't do it. And I think I wish the editors would catch more of that. I think too many of the editors see stuff like that and they're like, well, I don't want to get into a fight, so I'll just let it slide. Because the reality is, I'll hear more from the creator than I will hear from the customers. I can just kind of tune them out. I'm removed far enough from them. I don't have to really deal with those consequences. I mean, people say, why do comic books put up or encourage some of this politics? It's because they're several steps removed from the end customer. If a customer gets really angry about some of this stuff, they may go on social media, but then they're very easily blocked. But if they're going to bitch, they're going to bitch most likely inside their comic shop, and they have. The Diamond behind the comic shop and Marvel behind there, or DC or Image or whoever, they're not seeing any or hearing any of this. So that's why it goes on. They're not seeing any of the consequences. If they were on the front lines having to deal with customers come in and complain, even if they disagreed with them politically, they would start to knock it off, because it's not worth the hell to just put up with this kind of stuff for what ultimately is a bad joke. That's one, again, you could point to what Eric Larson did with Trump in Savage Dragon. At least he attempted to make somewhat of a story out of it, versus that let's make Modoc Trump, where it's clearly just a gag meant to, poke at people. And, how interesting is that? Not very interesting. I mean, to be honest, not even a little interesting. So, in terms of the beginning of the question, how can I see? So the problem is, it's this coordinated bit that I continue to push back on. And I guess all I can say is I've talked to enough people, I've seen enough of how the sausage is made, that you have to, when you talk about an agenda and everything else, and just like, look, many of you have said your piece on this. I've said my piece. I don't want to completely retread over old ground. I almost didn't bother with this question, but I couldn't help, wanting to do the gag of Superman shouting, "Let's go, Brandon," because that's hilarious. But the problem is, if we're talking about a kind of editorial choice of like, hey, we want to push, agenda X and Y. And so therefore we're going to coordinate with our creators, and we're going to say, whatever story you do, make sure that you have this and that, and we're going to bring in this creator that's going to help us, with this part of the agenda and everything else. There's too much planning and calculation in there for me to fully buy it, because the actual, day-to-day of making comics is a cluster. I mean, DC laid off tons of their associate editors, assistant editors. They laid off so much of their editorial staff. I mean, people are not getting calls. You get like Pete Tomasi, just nobody's returning his calls. That speaks to just incompetence. It doesn't speak to a well-oiled machine that is able to carry out an agenda. What I have said, and then many of you have said, well, this is an agenda. Again, it's all in your phrasing. That's fine. Is you do get editors who are picking people to work on these books. And those editors are like, I'm going to pick from my small group of friends that I know. My small group of friends all happen to think the way I do, politically, ideologically. And it's easier to work with those people because I like those people, and they never challenge any of my assumptions. They don't make me feel uncomfortable. So I'm just going to give work to those people because I know what's going to come out is something that I agree with. And what comes out is the kind of political or ideological or agenda-driven story that you see in your hands. And so if you want to call that an agenda, then okay. The the word agenda makes it sound way more thoughtful than a lot of it is. And I guess the challenge I've had with comics, and reason why I dig in on this to some extent, I hope, by the way, I hope people are actually listening to this point. Parakeet, right? Secret word is parakeet. Is anyone listening to it? Generally on this topic, people run in and they clearly make comments, haven't listened to 30 seconds or seen the subject line and just taking a wild stab at what they think the video is about. If you want to say that this idea of, and it is trickle down at the people at the very top going, well, I want staffers who are a cultural fit. If you've worked in any kind of company, you've probably heard that word before. I want a cultural fit. Cultural fit in this case, left leaning or very left leaning. Typically, it doesn't mean there's not. So what you wouldn't see is an overt statement in a company saying, I won't hire a Republican in this company. You will never see somebody say that out loud. What you will see is this idea of a cultural fit, which is, hey, if somebody is on social media talking about how they support Donald Trump and they hate the libs, that person's not going to be good cultural fit for our company. We don't want people who are that political. By the way, I sat in a conversation with editors who said exactly that. There was somebody who came in, seemed okay, but was very outspoken. I think that's the exact quote, very outspoken about how much they support Donald Trump. And, it wouldn't really work to have somebody in the office who was, comfortable being that outspoken about politics. Now, the comedy of that was, of course, and, you're sitting there listening to this and you're like, man, I wish people could listen to themselves more. Is this particular editor had posted many, many times about getting out the vote to defeat the Republicans because they're all evil. So it's one of those things where as long as the politics you agree with, they tend to not feel political to you. The politics you disagree with are political. Do you know what I mean? It's bizarre. It's hypocritical, and it's just stupid. It drives me crazy. But what happens is you get this idea of like, hey, we need a cultural fit in the company. And then in comes people that fit the culture, and then they bring in more people that fit the culture, and pretty soon you have a company where generally everybody thinks alike. Now, what I just described is certainly not unique to comics. I mean, that's most companies. Many companies have that. That's why when they get big enough, you do tend to get HR departments and you get more controls around hiring. And so, for example, if you go to a large company, and particularly an old school company, medical, insurance, something in those lines, you'll notice that in most cases, you can't just bring your friend into the company. That person has to apply, and if they know you have a relationship with that person, you generally have to exclude yourself from the hiring loop. They do this to avoid having groupthink. There's plenty of studies that show it happens anyway, eventually, but they can kind of stave it off by putting some good controls in place. This is a positive thing HR can do. There's plenty of negative things HR can also do, but that's a positive thing. Comics does not have that same control, and the usage of freelancers means that in many cases, editors have pretty free reign of who they can bring in. Now, definitely some of these people can get on the no hire list, and there's several people who are on the no hire list. I think it's not an open secret at this point, or it's an open secret. It is an open secret that it appears certainly that Mags is on the no hire list at the big two. But they're not hiring Mags as well as others. What got them there? Probably a number of things, including social media behavior. So even within a particular ideology, you can still go too far. You can make an embarrassment of yourself to the company. Chuck Wendig is another one. He had publicly fired. Why? Not again because of what he said, is because he said it so outspoken, so public, and it just became impossible to have somebody who was had the spotlight on him, even though the politics probably aligned with most of the people there. So that's my perspective of it. Again, I hear people, not everybody, whenever I say things like this, people are like, that's not what we believe at all. Just talk for yourself. Okay, I'll talk for myself, you talk for yourself. I have heard other channels speculate that there is a strategy in play to basically coordinate the books and the message in order to perpetuate a particular ideology. And that I struggle with. I struggle with not because I believe everybody's good and wonderful and would never do such a thing. I struggle with it because a lot of the publishing and the planning of books is rife with incompetence. And so the ability to pull off an agenda like that, probably beyond most of these people, way beyond most of these people. So, but are they, do people hire people that fit them ideologically, and then that creates a bubble or an echo chamber, and it allows this stuff to go by? Sure. Do I think that if you had an editor and you had book A and book B, book A is written by one creator, book B is written by the other one. Book A, the creator decides to put in a character that's based on I don't know, pick your who's the Greg Abbott, Texas governor, or the Florida governor, or just I don't know, some conservative. You know what? Actually, the person who I think is going to get some play in a lot of books, you get a Tucker Carlson like character in the comic reading the news, and the writer basically writes a very clear Tucker Carlson character, maybe minorly changes the name, and the character is depicted as a psychopath who's secretly murdering people, and the hero has to go in and stop them. That's going to get through. Absolutely, that's going to get through and get published. By contrast, if book B had the creator have a far left Rachel Maddow, say, like character do the same thing, probably it's going to get stopped. Why? Because the editor is going to say it's that thing that I mentioned earlier. They're going to go, well, this book can't be political, forgetting that book A is also very political. It's just the politics tend to align. It's this very weird thing that's true in human nature, where the stuff you agree with tends to not be, you don't describe it as political or ideological. That's just common sense. It's just how life is. The stuff you disagree with tends to be political. And that's the lens by which these people are often looking at things. Anyway, I'm sorry. Superman flying through the air shouting, "Let's go, Brandon." That's the best image that I've had all week. Or man, what about the Hulk? Hulk like leaps in, instead of Hulk smash, it's "Let's go, Brandon." That'd be, I don't know. It'd be funny. It won't ever happen, but it would be funny. Anyway, once again, for the record, I hate all these people. Hated the Republican candidate, hated the Democrat candidate. I'm on team nobody. That's me. Thanks for listening.